All right, we are live. I will call the meeting to order at 10:02. Uh, Welcome everyone. Do we have any additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda? Hearing none, we'll move on to approval of minutes from the November 25th meeting. Someone willing to make that motion?
I'll second.
Moved by Loretta, second by Jason. Rob, are you with us?
I am. I'm mobile, but I can track this information.
Do you need someone else to take minutes?
That would be convenient.
Is there a willing volunteer? Thank you, Loretta. All right, so moved by Loretta, second by Jason. Any discussion on the November 25 minutes? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay.
Aye.
We have passed our minutes. All right, so few things for this meeting. Basically a quick overview. We're going to discuss the future meeting needs now that we got our short-term proposal to the council, which they adopted. Now we need to start assessing what the long-term work looks like. Where are we going from here? I think a good way to process that is going to be doing a SWOT analysis, or at least part of one. So we'll work on that today and then discuss our next steps. I don't see us needing to meet every week, and I know attendance has been difficult through the last few weeks. So I just wanted to take the temperature of the room, see what people think we need to do, what our timelines are, if the Academy staff has any recommendations towards what our next milestones need to be versus what we look at for the long-term proposals regarding level 2 and everything else that we've lumped in. See, we lost Chris. Ken, do you know?
So we're experiencing we're having some network issues on our end today with all of the things so far, including Outlook, SharePoint, and
It's statewide.
our network
It's
connection in
actually
general.
statewide. Phone system too, and it's statewide. So if you're operating from your office inside the state network, you're having trouble.
Which is why everyone here except Ken isn't having trouble probably. Ken, do you have any perspective on timelines that we need to follow?
Following the SWOT analysis, or for which?
For our long-term recommendations to the council, are there any deadlines that we're up against, any legislative recommendations, requirements, anything like that?
Legislatively, no, I think we're okay. I think in order for us to be successful with the June class as our kickoff, any information that this group can get from Rob and or curriculum advice for the other remaining level 1 training sooner rather than later would be tremendously helpful.
Okay. I don't think that the group itself is going to need to work on that. I think it's small little working groups that can help put together those curriculums. So we can get that going for the June class. So before we move to a SWOT analysis, I think it's good for us to assess, our Monday mornings the best time for us to meet? And the second question is, how frequently should we meet? I'm thinking we move maybe to either every other week or once a month. Does anyone have a feeling on that?
Mark, is dropping out an option as we go through the legislative session? Because if I don't show up, then that's one person you count on when you're trying to get a quorum. But if I just don't exist anymore in this group, then it's easier to attain a quorum.
I appreciate that thought, and certainly understanding the mechanics of our meeting requirements. appreciate. I think there's value for the department to be part of the conversation, especially as we discuss alternative pathways and discuss what all of this means to all the systems. I know that VSP doesn't use level 2 really at all, I think, anymore. But that said, I think the vision of the group has been that we're kind of intertwining how level 1s, 2s, and 3s all work together. And so to lose that perspective, I'm concerned,
Okay.
but also totally understand the legislative conundrum.
How about we do this? How about I get a sidekick and one of us will remain present? So let me figure out who I can drag in to this.
That would be wonderful.
Okay, thanks.
What other thoughts do we have on meeting frequency?
Just a quick thought, I think, in order to be able to provide updates to all the interested, the group is satisfied with all of the product coming out for the start of the June class, and that everybody's confident and comfortable with what that's going to look like.
So Ken,
If we try every once a month, then that's 5 meetings prior to the kickoff.
Ken, we lost you, I think, in the middle. So are you encouraging we continue meeting weekly?
Every other week.
Every other week. Loretta?
And if we meet, every other week or monthly, then the subcommittees that are doing some of the curriculum stuff have a chance to meet as well.
Chris, I see we have you back and it looks like you're on your phone, so maybe your service will be better.
I am. I'm on my phone. I don't know. We don't know what's going on here today.
It's the whole state. So we're just discussing meeting frequency. One thought was to move to monthly meetings. Ken just recommended every other week, just so we have more than 5 meetings for the June rollout. Do you have any thought?
If you meet monthly, my experience is it's really hard to remember the threads that you're following. It like the lag time and so much happens in a month. For me, every month becomes well, if I don't need to attend to this more than once a month, it's probably not that important. So I would say go every other week if there were a vote.
I absolutely agree. And there's a lot of stuff that needs to be fleshed out here, but the weekly meeting is not going to work. And if everybody's meeting bi-weekly, they can schedule a little bit better, I think.
So we actually will need to take a vote on this because our meeting voting, or we previously voted on a weekly meeting schedule. So if someone would like to make a motion to meet bi-weekly. All right, moved by Loretta. We have a second.
I'll second.
I got 3 seconds, so take your pick, Loretta, Jason, Trevor, or Tom. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of meeting bi-weekly, vote by saying aye or raising a hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Great. So we will go every other week starting from this week. So we won't meet next week. We'll meet the following week. Are Mondays still the best shot? I see head nods. Okay, especially with the legislative session. I know that that's easier for me. Cool. So
Just,
we'll stick
Monday-
with this.
Monday after next is Martin Luther King Day, I believe.
Well, that's convenient.
Holidays are ready.
How about we do next week and then start the,
That looks good, except we'll run into President's Day in February. I don't know if people,
Also, next week, I don't know if there's anybody but me on the Law Enforcement Advisory Board, but it will impact that.
Yep.
Well, and my sidekick would probably be the same person, so.
I suspect we'll be dodging holidays, whether we meet next week or the following, or off the schedule of the following. But it might give time for the working groups. If we just cancel the meeting on the 20th and we pick up on the 3rd. Just looking through the calendar, it looks like we won't hit any other holidays till May. So we'll aim
Sheriff, just
for,
FYI,
yes.
sorry, TC Pennington can probably be available for that. Myself and Executive Director will probably be wrapped up with day one on February 3rd. Just FYI.
Okay. So we won't meet for the rest of January, it looks like, and we'll come back on February 3rd. And if TC Pennington can come with any of your thoughts, we'll go with that. All right. SWOT analysis. Let me get my screen shared. Is there anyone not familiar with the SWOT analysis? Cool. We won't do a primer on that. So my hope is we at least get through strengths and weaknesses of the program. If we can move to opportunities and threats, cool. But at least if we can focus on those first two sections. So let's go with, I don't know, you want to start with strengths or weaknesses first? Let's go with weaknesses. Do we have none?
Can you reframe the question that we're giving the weaknesses for?
What are the weaknesses of the level 2 curriculum?
Current or proposed?
Current.
It's not
Well,
enough. Sorry,
It
I'm sure
is-
that's really helpful.
It is not enough for
It's
what?
not level
Commissioner?
3.
It doesn't sufficiently cover high liability areas of the patrol function.
I can't type today. And just to pose the question, since we are mid-gate on our proposal, do you feel that the recommendations that have been offered solves that weakness or mitigates it?
Mitigates it, moves in the right direction.
So let's discuss that one. Where are high liability areas that aren't mitigated?
I think we get back into the circle conversation around it's not level 3. So it's not enough because we've said that level 3 is what's required to go out and do a patrol officer's job, right? So if you're using level 2 certified officers to do your patrol functions, then is it ever going to be enough?
I don't know how to actually frame it, Mark, but right on line with it does not address the high liability sufficiently enough. So as of today, there's absolutely no assessment of officer ability to take what little bit they've learned and put it into application and safely be a frontline police officer. We've moved forward in a proposal of having some level of scenario, but it's a drop in the ocean. So I don't know how to word that, but there needs to be, more time to A, train to these matters, and then B, assess the officer in as close to real life a situation as possible to see if they actually can function and have the physical and mental acuity to perform these high liability, high risk functions.
That real test, Mark, too, is also going to come from the FTO process. I mean, just increasing the hours is not going to cut it. It's the real attention to detail and the scrutinization that the recruit is given when they go into the FTO process, and then the documentation by that FTO.
Okay. Is there a weakness in the reliance on our FTO process?
Yes.
I think there's maybe a weakness. Well, I might say it's okay to rely on the FTO process. It's just that I'm not sure that the local level management of the FTO process has been, equal across all spectrums. I think that we've got some agencies that FTOs that are absolutely dialed in, good attention to detail. Others, they're checking boxes to move people through the process.
Yeah, and I should have corrected myself. It's not. I shouldn't say the process is not worthy. I think, as Trevor put it, you see a wide variety of FTO qualifications and FTO scenarios. And in all honesty, our scrutinization of the FTO packets that come in here for what we should be pushing back on for the FTOs to make sure that candidates are actually doing and performing before we clear them from an FTO packet. Some of the arguments that I get from agency heads are, well, is there any law or rule that says that they have to do certain amount of numbers? And other than the hours, the answer to that is no. But we're changing our process here by certain criteria that they're going to be required to do and document. And that's already being pushed back out to the FTOs for the future.
Is the way I'm characterizing this fair for people, or you disagree with what I'm writing as I go along? I'm just trying to formulate your thoughts in 2 sentences.
Well, the bullet point doesn't make sense. Is there any law or rule that requires something other than laws and hours? What does the laws mean prior to the ampersand?
That's a great question, Commissioner. We'll just leave it at hours. I don't remember where that thought went.
Yeah.
Right, other than hours of covered in a topical area, but again, this whole thing becomes a circle conversation back to competency-based certification, right? Like, how do we know that just because Joe FTO from wherever spent X number of hours with someone that they actually know how to perform a function safely? And I'm going to say this, and if anyone thinks I'm talking about anyone in particular, I'm not. It's not it could be any police department in the state. But we have some law enforcement officers out there, particularly in departments that don't use criminal law multiple times daily, who actually don't know criminal law. And I hear of them and I see them making wrong decisions on rules of criminal procedure, on all sorts of things that are actually technically incorrect, and they're passing it down to the next generation. So there's like absolutely no QA happening inside agencies to ensure that the people passing the knowledge down are passing the right knowledge down. So some of those things relate to putting people in handcuffs and detaining people and searching vehicles when they're clearly not authorized to do so, and other things like that. So I'm not sure this is a helpful comment and might not need to be captured in your bullet points, but we have a systemic problem where if there are FTOs who are not proficient in criminal law, they are just regurgitating bad habits. The same could be said of patrol procedures. Same could be said of, you take the topic. We don't know how well the FTOs actually exercise those skills in the field.
Is that going to raise the ugly conversation about level 2 officers as FTOs if they don't have the basis of experience in or knowledge to be able to effectively evaluate or judge competencies on those?
Well, I would say that would handicap some agencies tremendously unless they were A, grandfathered in, or B, given a reasonable path forward to level 3 certification. And I know we continually get hung up on the physical fitness side of that, but at some degree, we have to just grandfather some people in and set a new standard going forward, and just move forward on that. But we have to give people a reasonable path to level 3 certification if they have been practitioners in the field for X amount of time. I'm not talking about setting up a situation where you get certified as a level 2 and you use that system to circumvent going to the full-time academy. That's why I'm saying, like, draw a line in the sand, grandfather in some people above the line, and set a new standard going further forward to prevent that circumnavigation of the full-time academy. Long way of saying, don't limit it to level 2s if we don't have a path for level 2s to get to where they need to be able to serve that function in their agency.
I think that kind of ties well together with the conversation. I mean, we started this off with the high liability areas of patrol, but what do we use level 2s for? I could see a level 2 who does court duties. Level 3s get no training on that. And so I feel like a weakness of the level 2 program is it's become this amalgamation of all the things that we need that we can get right now. So I guess mission creep. Is it mission or scope? I guess more scope.
Sheriff Anderson,
Yes.
I just wanted to throw out as a member of the public that we could also utilize that FTO recertification process to help with some of that. That might be something we can include in that regular recertification of re-examining some of these different levels. What are the things you actually need to teach as an FTO? Going back to some of those like measurable objectives, we could then say as in the FTO process under each of these categories. I mean, it's already there in our DORs, but I think we might be able to focus on that in our recertification training, and that could help to shore up that FTO process.
Also, I mean, I question this in my own agency. How as a state are we utilizing FTO supervision? Who's overseeing the FTOs? What training do we provide to FTOs and or FTO supervisors if agencies have those? What else do we have?
I think, Mark, it's a bit of an obvious observation, but for the specialty requirements that the level twos are intended for, those are not supported and scripted well, hence the solution for the next training. So if we're looking at SWAT for what it looks like now, certainly those forward specialties should be supported more, which we're doing.
With the work that we're doing, Rob, I know that some of it's in works and some of it's vaporware, but are there further opportunities that we're not thinking of right now that we should be considering?
Well, there may be, because now it's like, again, I just speaking to the judicial angle, you know, this now requires is somewhat of a coordinated initiative to support level twos in, for example, court security training, and that would give us an opportunity to work with the individuals, agencies that are specialists in this area to provide a better FTO experience, a better trained officer for their specific duties. So it could expand the horizon and maybe take some of the burden off of the academy training side to, in terms of having to manage curriculums for which they aren't necessarily you know, fortified to provide the training at that level, or, you know, resources.
So kind of that jars loose a thought I have, which is that our standardized evaluation guidelines are based on the San Jose model, which includes patrol procedures and how to drive around a grid city block versus a courtroom. I'm wondering if there are supplemental SEGs or SEGs that would target the work that we have level twos doing. Ken, do you know that?
I don't know that there was ever SEGs created for the 4 branch of what we're now calling level 1. I can dive back into the archives and see, but I don't believe they were ever established in the FTEP 2 curriculum for standards and checklist.
Tom?
Yeah, funny you just brought up the San Jose model. I was going to say that's what all our folks are training as the San Jose model and catering specifically to level 3s. So if a level 2 FTO type framework doesn't exist somewhere that we could go out and pull, is it in our purview to help develop one, or is that too big of a lift for this committee, or is that like a subcommittee thing we could maybe do?
Ken or Chris, do you have a thought on that?
I think I'd like to find out first if we actually have some of that codified. Back in 15, 16, when the transition occurred, I know they were talking about the development of FTO documentation for that. I don't know that it ever took place after the discovery of time, and that one was going to take essentially the same amount of time as the other if it ever went forward. I'll find out.
Sorry, Mark, I lost connectivity during half of what Tom said and half of what Ken just said. Doing wonders here today.
Yeah, we're basically just kicking around the idea of could we, or that our SCGs are on the San Jose model, and are there other bodies of work that might help target the responsibilities and obligations of a level 1 or level 2? We don't have the answer to that. Is that something IATLS might have?
I don't know about IATLS, but California Post might have some of that already pre-programmed. I'll need to do some digging on that.
I think after Ken does his digging, we might be able to answer your question, Tom. I'm not sure I have a direction one way or the other.
So I guess if we're not able to find one, is that something, do you think that's too big of a lift for us to try to develop here on this committee, or is that for somebody else?
I would assume we'd set up a working group to accomplish that. I could see that being an amount of work, but also having never developed SCGs myself, I'm not sure how difficult or not difficult it is to basically create a rubric, which, I mean, we've banged those out before. Or maybe that's something we try to support getting a contractor to maybe even help with. And maybe that is something we can do. I don't know. Sorry to call you out, Domenico. Is there anything from the AG's perspective that you could think of that might be a weakness around level 2?
I mean, I agree with what everyone has been saying. I do remember that I think in the beginning of our conversation, it's not around curriculum. It's about identifying level 2 officers from level 3 so that the public is aware of that as our fellow officers. And other states do have that on uniforms and other things. So that's the only other thing I can think of that hasn't already been listed that I know we've kind of talked about before, but isn't necessarily part of curriculum.
Jason, you've been a little quiet today.
Just waiting my
Anything from-
turn. Yeah, I would add lack of physical fitness testing.
And has Tat kicked around any ideas with regards to these things?
We had simply felt that they should be, level 2 should have the same fitness standard as level 3 entrance standard.
Okay. Anyone I haven't picked on, Loretta?
I agree with all of the above.
All right. We can come back to weaknesses at another point, but we at least got a starting point. How about strengths?
It allows someone to get out there a little quicker.
Tom?
I'd say that this program exists at all is a strength of it. That it can be such a force multiplier for different agencies and allow them to do a lot more than they typically would.
Mark, I think it also gives you the opportunity to view a person in the field and see whether they're really suited for law enforcement work, both from the agency and the candidate's perspective.
You know, Mark, when I think about the range of agencies out there, this is an important tool in the toolbox. Most of our concerns that have been voiced in this group and in other venues relate to over-reliance on level twos to do the whole enchilada. But in larger agencies, level two certification can play a vital role in being able to enforce local ordinances and, be that interim level between, say, a Parks and Rec ranger and a level three certified officer. That there are in certain agencies of medium to large size a legitimate intermediate role. I think that most of our fears or concerns about liability come when we're putting level twos out there to be full service, but for the things they can't investigate, but to basically be full service patrol officers.
I feel like that's a gap that we didn't mention in weaknesses. Um,
Well, to your point, Commissioner, in Burlington, we don't have level twos, but we are using now community service officers to fill a lot of those roles, a lot of the traffic, the ordinance enforcement, and with no standardized training program for them, it's a nightmare management wise from what I've heard from the folks on patrol. So the difference here is if you put them out there as police officers doing that same job, the liability goes up exponentially.
what else do we have?
I think it also allows some people who couldn't do the 16 or 17-week program all at once the ability to get into the field.
I also think it's important to call out a recognition of cost, not just for the agency, but there are people who have no interest in doing patrol work, which that's where they're doing things such as like being a court officer, doing traffic direction. And it's like having someone get their master's or doctorate to go do Starbucks. And would we be compensating a person at the same level if they had a doctorate versus an associate's? Fingers are just not working today. What other strengths do we have?
the ongoing issue of not being able to get people to fill full-time law enforcement roles. I mean, this is at least an interim step when properly used and supervised to meet some of the community's needs during this, unprecedented recruitment struggle.
Trevor, you look deep in thought.
Oh, it's trying to breathe and, little brain fog, but I'm trying to come up with something new and having difficulty. So I don't want to say what they said, but what they said.
Ken or Chris?
I'm not sure which column mine would go in, unfortunately. The reality is that this is a cheaper, more efficient way for agencies that are struggling to meet the needs that their communities want to get law enforcement services. And that's a double-edged sword, right? Like in the best of scenarios, that's a great tool to have in the toolbox. And in the worst case scenarios, it's just another addition to an ongoing problem that doesn't get fixed. And I think we can try to point out all the positives that there are with level 2. I guess if you look at it from the commissioner's standpoint, it would be one less person knocking on the door saying, "Will you cover my town if my PD folds?" And I don't know how often you get that phone call, Commissioner.
More often than you think.
I mean, my nerd brain goes to classifying what you just said, Chris, as technical debt, but I'm not sure what the not software engineering version of technical debt is. I'm just going to write that for now and see if I can come up with a better word for it later. Well, I know it's not an ideal. I feel like the training program is more accessible. We want to hop to opportunities and threats. Oh, Rob, go ahead.
Just another observation, and it's not always obvious, but and I don't know which column this fits in, probably the positive one. The level 2 and the specialty side of things does offer an opportunity for longer officer retention. So what we see on the judicial side is, people will retire from X agency and they still want to be in LE, but they don't want to work the roads. So they're working in the courts. And I have numerous people in that category. So again, it's a specialty function, but it's also an opportunity to retain some, I don't want to say senior, experienced veterans. However you want to phrase it.
Those are folks that are already certified coming into the program though, correct?
Yes.
Yeah,
Or they're
that's actually an
coming
important
from out of
point.
state.
Or who are level 3 certified and don't want to have to go through the level 3 research requirements because their function has narrowed. Is that some of what you see, Rob?
Definitely. And in
Yeah.
fact, if the level 1 becomes, you know, as we get towards a more defined level 1, that's going to be very palatable to, you know, especially retirees.
You have a quizzitive look, Ken.
It's probably gas. My thought was that the recertification requirements for level 2 versus level 3 are not that dissimilar. So I'm just trying to wrap my brain around what that might look like for level 1 and how that might extend or prolong someone's experience in law enforcement if they went from a level 3 capacity to a level 2 or a level 1 capacity. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, what I would offer is I know that there's some agencies that are accessing federal agents that are retiring. So their certification doesn't transition well, even though they're well trained. And so sometimes they'll introduce them into a level 2 certification program, saying, here's a 2-week class you can go to, you know how to do those things. I know.
Understood. Yep, that part I got. It was the differentiation between someone who was already level 3 or level 3 certified, reducing their scope or reducing their practice from a level 3 to a level 2 or a level 1.
Sure.
That's all.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing along those lines because the major components, especially now that you're looking at this widened scope, is, you know, you're still going to have use of force, you're still going to have firearms, the things that they're going to need to be able to do, but you might have a reduction in all the other type of training that an agency might ask them to do on a regular basis for recertification.
All right, we got 9 minutes left. Let's hop into opportunities. Jen Frank already brought up an opportunity around recertification training with FTOs.
I think we also have an opportunity if we expand our training. Not so much with the academy, but maybe have more trainings conducted in departments and stuff for those like things that they're missing or something like that. Just it's just a possibility. Like the driver's training or, you know, have separate classes, and this is not necessary for people who haven't had it in the past, for those people who before we changed it, you know, to take that training.
Mark, one more thing I want to bring up, especially with this work group, and I think I heard Jason mention it a little bit earlier, is the physical requirements, the feeling that the physical requirements should be the same for level 1, 2, and 3. In council rule, even in the new rule, under Rule 14, for the minimum entry standard for any level 1, 2, or 3 requires all of the same requirements, including the PT test. I don't know, Ken and I have had this discussion, why that hasn't been the case for level 2, but it hasn't. And I don't know. I can be rest assured that there will be much pushback from law enforcement, but I think this is another opportunity once this once this change happens, where we're incorporating level 1 and 2, that we are mandating the same requirement that are in council rule that nobody has been held to for whatever unknown reason.
I'm going to call what we did before as a custom practice or policy. Actually, that's probably more of a weakness.
I think you can add firearms to the EVOC. Since
Anything
the idea
specific
was
with
to
firearms,
expand.
Ken?
What's that?
Anything specific with firearms? I know we do like the state quals, but
Right, for right now, the level 2 is only state qual. The proposed expansion would include all of the additional standards that the level 3 does. This may not be the place for that.
Tom?
I was just going to add under opportunities, I think more and better trained level 2s are going to let agencies, like yours, fill gaps in shift coverage and ultimately help combat burnout amongst your level 3s.
Commissioner, I don't know if you're with us right now, but this might be the time to talk about alternative pathways.
Mark, I
If,
see an alternate. Sorry, go ahead.
So I was going to say, if she's tied up for a minute, I would love to hear, I don't know if we have enough time now, but the status of the current pathway, or is there one? As far as hours and
Are you talking to
training.
me? Sorry, I had to take a phone call and I actually have to jump, but I hear the question and I want to answer really quickly. The current grant to develop an alternate path to certification, we had put it on the shelf in about September, given the turnover with executive director and chair of the council. And we had agreed to come back to it in January, February timeframe once the new class gets settled. So myself and my team and Chris and his team should be getting together in the next 4 weeks to talk about how we move forward with that grant. We're aware that we're going to probably have to get a 1-year extension because we've had a chunk of lost time, but the grant is still intact. The project is still alive. It just went on the shelf for a few months. And with that, I have to jump. I need a couple minutes to refill my water bottle and get to my 11 o'clock, but it's been amazing. Thanks, friends.
Take care, Jim.
Happy New Year.
That's helpful. Ken, just generally, Ken or Chris, could you just explain what the current, like what that looks like, or what the plan is? Is it level 2s who have worked for a certain amount of time, who have attended, X trainings, can apply to be upgraded to level 3? Is that the end goal?
It hasn't been that well defined yet, Tom, simply because the grant and the parameters around that grant were pretty specific to working with a Vermont collegiate institution. And that was part of the reason that came in right at the beginning after IATLAS had already started their work on the curriculum revision. So in the interim process before that conversation starts up again, which should be hopefully the second week after the legislature starts. My hope is that at least in the meantime, while this isn't an alternative where there's a lot that's going on, but there is the process that the chiefs and sheriffs had worked on for getting folks that were level 2E certified, a pathway to level 3 certification. And we have, I don't know how many are in the hopper in that process, but we have one that will be attending this next 119th class to go from level 2E to level 3. So there is a pathway for those folks should they choose to take that pathway. And to the chiefs and sheriffs' credit, it's been it's work. It's not a given. It's work that they're going to have to really accomplish to get there.
Thank you.
All right, so with 2 minutes left, I have discussed our next steps. Obviously, my intent would be to finish out this document, think on it, we'll circulate it around as well. But be able to finish this up and then identify what areas we want to tackle. Does the group have any specific feelings or ideas that they want us to focus on?
I think one thing that's probably on the immediate agenda is working on that SEG for level 1 for June. That's going to be an important thing to get done as soon as we figure out what the academy needs and what they want us to do.
I think, yeah, that's on point, Chief. I think part of what we're looking for is whatever the curriculum is going to be for that 4-phase level 1 training that may happen away from the academy. I think that'll help inform what the SEGs need to look like. So we have some competencies that we can identify based on the curriculum that's presented to the student.
So that probably means we need to get the judiciary curriculum to the academy. Rob, is that something that could get worked out in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, we have the existing curriculum, so yeah, that's something we can do.
Ken, what's the process for the curriculum development? How should that come? Just email what he has to you?
We can certainly do it that way and take a look at it and see how. I think we need to work in concert with the folks and the practitioners that are already out there that are currently using those skills to ensure that it's going to cover across the board what everybody needs, not just to include the courtroom security, but the transport, the scene security, all the rest of that, to really engage those practitioners that are doing it on a day-to-day basis. Does this really cover all the things that you need it to cover? And I think based from that curriculum, then we go back and we look at the SEGs. We continue to look at the DOR and ensure that those are all same.
Maybe one thing too is that we need to do is make up that working group sooner rather than later.
So how about this? Let's get an email thread going with Ken and Rob and whoever wants to be on that working group. I think at least for the judiciary stuff, that's going to be 2 critical pieces. I can certainly join in from the sheriff's perspective since we do a lot of those things. Ken, I also have a soon to be updated policy for the superload escort policy, which DMV created. And DMV as a person who's responsible for training, who said she'd be interested in helping with the development of a curriculum. And then for transports, I think that the sheriffs are probably the natural solution since they are the ones who do it.
Absolutely.
DMH also has a policy and curriculum for mental health patients. So that's also an existing basis of knowledge. Cool. Well, we're a few minutes over. Is there any public comment that we need to acknowledge? Hearing none. Is there a motion to adjourn? Made by Loretta, seconded by Tom. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay. Well, thank you everyone for coming. There's no need for that doodle poll since we were able to meet today and rearrange our schedule. So we won't be back until a month from now, but in that time, if you have any body of work, curriculum, materials, anything that you can get to Ken, I hope it's not too much of a problem to have you be the dumping ground.
Oh, no, I don't have anything going on.
Okay. And then if there is any need for help from others, Ken, certainly let me know and we'll try to facilitate whatever resources we can. So you aren't just the dumping ground. I just know you need to be a central focal point for it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think we're going to need to bring all the resources to bear to develop the actual curriculum that you're looking for.
Awesome. All right. Take care, everyone. Be well. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Mark, in the notes, I just put that you're gonna put that worksheet out. I didn't make all those notes that you did. So
Yep. I will
Awesome.
circulate it. If you can send me the minutes, I'll circulate the minutes, the agenda, and
I will.
the draft
Type them
SWOT
up
analysis.
as soon as I get off.
Awesome.
Kenan, do you have a few minutes for a phone call?
I sure do. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.